This is a quick tutorial on how to flash AM32 firmware to the Aria 70 amp ESC. You start out by finding the clock and DIO pins on the back of the panel, as well as the ground. I highlight those here. You'll want to solder wires to each of them. I use the DuPont servo pins that come with the ESC. I just desolder them from the ESC and use those, as well as an extra one for the ground. You're going to plug those into an STM32. Oh yeah, it's also possible if you lift the pads to solder directly to the chip. I did that to one of my ESCs. So the first two pads there. You want to plug those into an ST-Link V2 to the clock, DIO, and ground pins respectively. And then you connect it to this STM Cube programmer software. I'm going to have all the softwares I use linked in the description in a Google Drive folder. You can see my settings there. I'm also going to link a written article by the developer of AM32 on all the settings to do this correctly. You'll want to set readout protection to AA, and then you want to set all of the write-out protections. And then after that, you're going to apply, and it's going to apply those settings. And then you're going to erase everything that's on the ESC now. You can't see it because my screen's a little bit taller, but there's a little erase button down there, and that blanks off the BL32 firmware. You're going to find the bootloader that I linked and set it to the 8 with 6 zeros, 0x08 with 6 zeros behind it, and flash it to that address on the chip. And then you're going to do the same thing with the EEPROM to 8 with 2 zeros. What else is it? A 7, a C, and 2 zeros behind that. You don't have to strictly flash the EEPROM, but it worked better in my experience. The next software we're going to use is this BL Heli Suite. You're going to flash your Arduino with that to actually set your AM32 settings and get your firmware up to date. Set the baud rate to what it is, and then you want to be on the one wire firmware. I didn't have my USB plugged in there, so I need to replug it, and then the flash goes successfully, but make sure you're on the one wire interface. Here's my setup for the Arduino. I used pin 11 as my servo pin or PWM pin. It might be possible to have the wrong one, so you can switch between them if necessary. Here I am in the multi-ESC config tool. It's the final piece of software. I don't know why it doesn't package in the flashing, but you have to use the BL32. Here I am choosing the firmware that I've also linked. There might be a more up-to-date version, but this 1.99 is the most up-to-date as this is coming out. So I flash the firmware, and then I'm going to close the connection to make sure the firmware flashed correctly and connect it. And you can see the 1.99 there is the correct firmware revision. And then you set whatever settings you want for AM32. I'm not an expert in this, but it'll depend on your application. You want to make sure stuck rotor protection is off though, and sign mode depending on if you drive or weapon. So you can play with these settings now that you're flashed to AM32. It should be a little bit more reliable than the BL32 on this ESC. I closed the connection here, but I actually forgot that I like to set another setting, so I'm going to reconnect here, and then make sure that the input is disabled. The temperature and current limits are disabled. You can also spin the servo or spin the motor from here if you have it connected. Make sure you don't do that when it's connected to your weapon, but otherwise you can do that. Okay, that's all.